Hello,
Welcome back.
I'm Nicole,
And I'm Megan.
and we're the Synchronicity Sisters. We help you do a lot of life differently. Give you a new perspective.
Yeah, we do lots of things. We have lots of podcasts and things. So if you want to know more about us, binge those. Visit our website, visit our social media. There's lots of ways to learn more about us because we do lots of different things. But today we're going to talk about forgiveness, which is a huge subject in our work, in life, in all of the things. And it's really interesting because I think it goes hand in hand with self-love or in love, and with love in general. Because when you love yourself, you love other people. And when you love other people, you let them be autonomous. And when you let people be autonomous, there's not a whole lot of need for forgiveness because you don't punish people or get mad at people for doing what they feel is best in that moment. And so forgiveness kind of falls to the wayside because forgiveness is never about the other person. It's always about you and your expectations and the way that you move through life. You get mad at people for doing things differently than you would. And that's kind of playing God, of thinking that you know better than everybody else. But people have a right to mess up. People have a right to make mistakes. People have a right to learn lessons. And so when we think about forgiveness, or when I think about forgiveness, which, is a constant thing of like when we move through life, I choose to believe that people are doing the best they can with the consciousness that they have and the level of consciousness that they have, and that people come into your life so that you can learn and grow. And when we realize that, there really is no need to forgive. It's just a learning and a moving through and a moving on. It's not about holding grudges. So,
Yeah, I think it's just a part of it is really seeing how much, are you having to forgive someone because you're trying to be in control of the situation. Majority of the reason why you end up needing to forgive somebody is, like you said, it's about an expectation in which you had for that person that was not communicated, and then they let you down or they hurt you or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's a you problem because you're forgiving yourself and you're changing that the mind frame.
well, and if you understand consciousness and that everything's a projection, so if somebody does something to you, what part of you is broken that even allowed that into your consciousness, right? I kept attracting men that would cheat or were polyamorous or blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of interesting now that when I look back at my own consciousness, I didn't feel worthy of love and I wasn't loving myself. And so they were loving other people because I didn't love myself. And so when you're a 0 in a relationship, of course, there's going to be other people in the relationship because there's not 2 people in the relationship. There's a 0 and there's a 10. So, just understanding that there's not a need to forgive somebody else. There's a need to forgive yourself and integrate the broken piece of you. It's not ever about anybody else. And there's a really interesting quote that I read actually earlier today that inspired this podcast. And it was, forgiveness is letting somebody out of prison and realizing the prisoner was you. And that was kind of hit me, and I read it a few times, and it's that's so true. Because when you hold grudges, you're basically, or trying to punish somebody else or not forgiving somebody else, you're drinking poison and expecting the other person to die from it. It's just when you're truly in a higher consciousness and understand love, forgiveness just becomes a natural part of life, and it's not even something that you have to think a lot about because it's just second nature to understand that people are going through stuff. We all are. And I don't think that people intentionally hurt other people for the most part. It's usually unconscious from what I have witnessed. There's always exceptions, but...
Well, and a lot of it is subconscious. A lot of people don't even realize they're hurting other people. That's why boundaries, that's why communication is so important, because the more you communicate and if that person doesn't want to be in your life anymore because that boundary is not something that they want to sustain or they want to respect or understand or cherish, then they will just leave. So then over time, you actually end up doing less forgiving because you hold a standard in your life. Now, someone might step on your toe or whatever. I mean, that's really different, right?
That's an accident. Yeah.
Over time, you actually, if you use the proper communication, if you're communicating boundaries, if you're in self-love and you're doing your own work and you're staying in your own lane, you actually start to have to forgive less because you aren't attracting people that aren't respecting your boundaries, and you don't have expectations for people that aren't being communicated. So over time, really, like, it's weird because forgiveness becomes this, like, no longer a revolving door of like, oh, well, that person should have done that. Well, technically, you didn't communicate that that was something that you didn't feel comfortable with, and so you're mad at them for it. It's like I don't know exactly if I'm, like, explaining that correctly. But, you know, people hurt people. And I always go back to, like, people hurt people that are hurt. And so a lot of this is unconscious. And a lot of times people don't even recognize that they have their own, like, behaviors, or they're hurting other people. It's just kind of a unconscious thing, I guess.
Well, it's when you feel the need to forgive somebody, I want you to reflect on what it is in you that's broken.
Yeah.
And what you need to forgive in yourself, because it's always about you. It's never about the other person. And when we reframe that and kind of restructure, like, why am I angry at this person, or da-da-da-da-da-da-da, remember that all of that is just a construct of thought. And it's like how we think about things is how we perceive things, and how we perceive things is a perception of needing to forgive or that they've done wrong, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And what I always ask our clients is like, okay, well, you know, this person did you wrong. Okay, but in whose opinion, right? Because there's always three truths. And what lens were you seeing it through? Because if you're not seeing it through a lens of love, then of course you have something that you need to forgive. But even a serial killer, right, or somebody that has done massive harm, their problem in their life is that they didn't have enough love growing up. They didn't have enough love throughout their life. That person saw a lot of darkness, or the absence of love and forgiveness, because love and forgiveness go hand in hand. You know, when you truly love things and love yourself, like I said earlier, it's really easy to forgive. You know, you may have, that person might be in your life differently or not be in your life, but you don't hold resentments towards them. And, you know, again, I'm going to tell you, it's not about the other person.
No.
It never is. And that's such a hard pill to swallow. You know, and we go around, but that's victimology of thinking that, you know, other people are responsible for where you're at in life. And that's not radical accountability. You are responsible for the life that you live. Even if at one point, you know, we are all victims in the way we were raised, or the culture that we're in, or, you know, the government, or blah, blah, blah. At some point in time, you have to take responsibility and accountability for who you are and who you're becoming, and how you view the world and what lens you view the world through. You know, that's our responsibility as we grow up. That's our responsibility, and that's part of maturing, right? You're immature if you think you're a victim. You're immature if you think that you're at the world's mercy. You know, are we at the mercy of some things? Yes, but you try to do the best you can with what you have, and you give the rest over, right? That's believing in a good God versus believing in a bad God, and fear, and that the world is a horrible place. We have to understand that everything is happening for a reason and helping us grow. And if you look at things through that lens, then gratitude replaces forgiveness and fear. And we become so much more adaptable, and so much more loving, and so much more gracious, and so much more kind. And we look at people that are angry or victims, and we smile and we go, I used to be you. You know, there's this like total grace and humility in the face of these things, and in the face of anger, and in the face of hate, because it's them not understanding what they're doing to themselves. And it's never about the other person. You know, like when somebody cheats on you or somebody, that's totally about them. You know, they're going through something. That's them at battle and at odds with themselves. And if you take it personally and don't forgive them, then that's on you. You know, that's you wanting to be a victim. That's not you standing in your truth and realizing like, oh, there was other issues in our relationship, and taking accountability for what was going on and the consciousness that was involved. And, you know, it's just time that I think that people step into a different consciousness than, you know, I need to forgive, I need to do this, I need to do that. No, you need to understand that growth and compassion and empathy are all part of love, and life is helping you grow and change in every minute. And that's just adversity, and it is an opportunity, and it's how you're choosing to view it. And, you know, again, that was such a profound quote this morning that I think I'll carry with me for the rest of my life, of like, you know, do you want to be a prisoner or do you want to be free? You have that choice, and you make that choice. And, you know, we all hurt each other unintentionally, but we're really just hurting ourselves. And, you know, when you realize that, there's no need to really ever hold a grudge.
Well, I think the baseline of it is like, especially if you're in a relationship, I think relationships, whether it's friendship or intimate, like you have to do a lot of forgiveness because you're forgiving yourself. Like they always say like, oh, relationships, it's all about like compromise, negotiation, and forgiveness. Well, it's forgiveness because you always are holding an expectation for the other person. And yeah, it's, you know, if you're seeing these huge red flags of like, oh, this person pissed me off, they did this to me, blah, blah, blah. If you're in the whole thing of like pointing the finger at someone else, it's their fault, they did this to me, then you need to like flip the mirror around and be like, okay, well, what did it takes two to tango? So like, where are you at fault, and where do you need to do forgiveness in yourself and, you know, forgive the other person as well?
Well, and it's just so interesting, right? Like we have so many, you know, and I used to be a part of this too. It's like there's so much chatter about like narcissists and this and that. And it's so interesting, right? Because narcissists are just victim all the time. Like they are the epitome of victimology. And so when you're a victim, everything in your life is evil. And guess what? Everything in your life is evil, then you're evil. Like you are an equal vibration. So, you know, when you think the world is against you and you're da-da-da-da-da-da, the only thing that you need to know to ever like be away from narcissists, or if you're worried you are a narcissist, don't be a victim. And if you're not a victim, they won't be attracted to you because you won't allow that kind of energy in your field. And if you're not a victim, then you're not a narcissist, because narcissists are just quite literally victimology at its finest.
It's everyone else's fault.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, they'll like talk about things that happened like 20 years ago and how terrible everybody was, and you know that it's their fault that their life is this way, and and it's, you know, they're still blaming their parents, and it's just wild. So, you know, don't live your life in fear, because fear is also victimology. You know, things happen, but they happen for a reason, and you have to move through life like understanding that love and kindness are always more powerful than anything else on earth. Like good always wins. That's just the law of the universe. And darkness eats itself. It really does. People that don't forgive, people that hold on to shit, they become it, and it just eats them alive. And, you know, it's been a huge part of our consciousness of like to let go of the people that have done wrong, because they will just destroy themselves. It just, I've seen it over and over again, you know, in my own life. And when I didn't forgive, or when I've held on to things, and it's actually been some of the most powerful experiences of like taking responsibility for my part in things and opening that door. And whether people choose to meet you halfway, you know, because I mean, let's just be honest, the consciousness has not been good for a long time. And most of us have a path of kind of debauchery in our past, of like broken friendships and relationships and all sorts of stuff that we're kind of just like, what the hell was I thinking? That's where the consciousness has been at. And now we have an opportunity to do and be better. And it's such a beautiful thing. I know I'm grateful for it, even though when I look back and go, why the hell did I do that? Or like, why did I say that? Or what was I doing? It was because, you know, I was playing victim, and so I was lashing out at other people and making them responsible for my feelings, and instead of having a conversation about things. And this is why we teach communication, because when you negotiate and you talk, There is no victim or victor. There's a negotiation of like, I feel this, you feel that.
Well, both parties win.
Yeah, you get to grow and be together because we're human. There's going to be stuff. But most of the time when you talk about it, you're like, oh, I didn't even see your perspective. Oh, I didn't even da-da-da-da-da. And it loses, this like, poor me. Oh, everything always is happening to me and blah, blah, blah. Because when we see it so often when clients, when they step out into the world and actually live their life the way that, their soul, God, whatever intended, it's so beautiful what happens. And they're like, oh, I didn't know. And I was like, isn't it crazy? And we had those experiences too. But a lot of it was forgiving ourselves and stepping into like, we didn't know better in the past, so we couldn't do better. Now we know better, we're going to do better. And hopefully we'll help other people with where they're at and what they're doing. And, when you change, everything around you changes and you help other people. And so, again, I think this is an important topic because it's kind of like the heart and soul of love. Because again, when you truly are in a loving energy, you go, oh, I see you. I know exactly what you're doing. You're about to face plant. Like, good luck with that. But it's like and if they don't ask for help, you're just kind of like, all right, well, let me know if you need me. It's just kind of, you start to really, not really be happy, but just kind of like, all right, that's rough. And you understand like where somebody's at and you're grateful that you're not them anymore. 'Cause you've been there. And I think a huge, huge part of that is just forgiving people and just letting them be where they're at. And when you do that, it's actually amazing the conversations you can have because you can just say, and actually we had this happen today with our dad, you can just say, you may not understand now, but you will. And I just need you to trust me. And I just need you to know that this is the path that is for me. And you may not understand it and you may not see it and you may not agree with it, but just allow me to do what I need to do. And it was like actually a constructive conversation, but I think he's trying to forgive himself for the past. He's trying to control me, and like I don't hold it against him and I don't push back on him. I just go, I understand where you're coming from. I get it because I do. And it's, people don't have to understand where you're at.
No,
people don't have to, they don't know. All you
people
have to
don't know what they don't know.
They don't know. And it's like, okay, just be like, I see you. I get it. Just let me do my thing. And when you do that versus like, you need to see and they don't understand. And like, there's this control and this like anger. And again, it goes back into like what has happened to you because you're emotional and you're not forgiving something versus
or you're
just
trying
like,
to control it.
Yeah. Which control and fear and forgiveness and all of that, same vibration. Because when you're trying to control something, you're fearing it. And, actually it's funny because Dad like gave in to me. He was like, oh, guess this is happening. I was like, yep, this is happening.
It's fine. He'll be fine. Not worried about him.
But again, his control and stuff is his own fear and his own need to like forgive and move on from his own shit.
But if you also open up a conversation with people, they'll tell you where they haven't forgiven themselves.
Yeah, he did do that.
Because if they're projecting onto you and they're wanting to tell you like all of the things, they're gonna tell you all the things that they haven't forgiven themselves for.
Yeah.
So usually when someone's trying to control something in someone else's life, it's because they have made the mistake and haven't forgiven themselves. And so then it's just a like really cool mirror that they can't really see. And it's entertaining to just listen to people and be like, oh, okay, I'll just be over here.
And what people are afraid of, they do.
Yeah. So
they're like, cheaters, da-da-da-da. They're probably a cheater. Like,
yes.
Oh, you're going to go and you're going to da-da-da-da. Then they've gone and done the same thing. You're only afraid of what you are or are conscious of. So just be aware of like when you're freaking out about things, you got to look at it because it's a trigger. Mm-hmm. If you're not forgiving somebody, look at that. Like, what did you do wrong? Because it's not them that you're not forgiving. It's yourself. Because when you forgive yourself, you're like, oh, I totally get where that person was coming from. Been there, done that. And you have a lot of grace and a lot of compassion, I think.
Yeah.
I feel.
So ask yourself, like, is there somewhere in your life that you're not forgiving or you haven't forgiven in yourself? Because forgiveness also eats away at you. It manifests in very aggressive illnesses.
It'll destroy you.
Yeah. A lot of people that suffer from addiction, lower back pain, liver problems, gallbladder problems, it's anger and lack of forgiveness. But if you are over there watching us on YouTube, thank you for being there. Subscribe, share with your friends, because we're still really trying to grow that over there. But if you're on Apple or Spotify, thanks for being here. Rate the show. And until next time, bye.
Bye.